Good morning, everyone. My name is Simon Hamilton. I'm the Chief Executive of Belfast Chamber, and you're very welcome to this, our latest event in our Re-Energizing Belfast series, which is delivered in partnership with Carson McDowell. Today's theme is Destination Waterfront, and over the next hour or so, we're going to look at how Belfast is reconnecting as a city with its river and its waterfront, and how it is becoming increasingly an attractive place to live, work and enjoy leisure time. We're going to do that with the help of some very special guests. We're going to do that with the help of Joe O'Neill, who's the Chief Executive at Belfast Harbour, Kerrie Sweeney, who's CEO at Maritime Belfast, Alex Pease, who's a Chief Investment Officer at Watkin, and John Davidson, Director of Strategic Communications at Kerrie. So we'll hear from each of them in turn about what their different organisations are doing in terms of making Belfast waterfront an increasingly attractive place. So I mentioned that this series is being delivered in partnership with Carson McDowell, the leading Belfast law firm. We're very pleased to be joined as well by their partner, Emma Cooper. I'm just going to hand over briefly to Emma to say a few words of welcome. Emma.
Thanks, Simon, and welcome everybody on this very miserable, rainy May day. It's Carson McDowell's absolute pleasure, and we're very proud to partner with the Chamber with respect to this series. It's been fascinating and interesting, and I hope you've caught up with the series to date. The re-energisation of Belfast is vital. It was vital before the pandemic. It's even more vital now as we're looking towards encouraging people to come back into Belfast to live and to work and to bring their families back in as well. Now, Belfast is a maritime city, and the Port of Belfast is centre and has always been centre to Belfast. But as we look to bring people back into the city, as Simon says, we are looking to our iconic waterfront as a destination for people to live and work and to spend some leisure time as well. As Simon mentioned, we have a jam-packed session today, so hopefully we'll get through everything. I hope you enjoy, I hope you find it interesting, and if you do have any questions, then do pop them in the box and we'll hopefully try and get to them. But enjoy, thanks.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you once again to Carson McDowell for their support in making this series possible. And as Emma said, it's a question and answer option. The box should be at the bottom of your screen. If anything that any of the speakers says interests you and you want to find out more, we'll do our very, very best in the time that we have to get through some questions later on. We do have a packed session. I'm going to move to our first speaker, and I'm really looking forward to all of our speakers today, because I think what they have collectively to say is really interesting. Will give us all a lot of hope for the future of our city. So our first speaker is Joe O'Neill. Joe is the Chief Executive at Belfast Harbour, and a hugely important role in developing and pushing forward our city. So Joe, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, and good morning, everyone. And thank you to the Chamber for the opportunity to speak to you today and share a little bit about our strategic ambition. And I do say a little bit because to try and cram in our extensive ambition from now to 2035 within 10 minutes is going to be incredibly challenging. A port for everyone. Our strategic ambition, which we established just over 2.5 years ago, and we were really like this strapline that we came up with. I think we recognised that as a port, we had a strong industrial and maritime heritage, substantial engineering base, and a place which was largely associated with industry and with work, and an area which was not known and visible and tangible to a lot of people. And we see that dramatically changing over the course of the next 15 years or so, to a point in time where we believe it will be a port for everyone. And I hope the next few slides will illustrate why there's some substance to that strapline that we have adopted. I know this is a series of events. The previous two events were on the future of work and city centre living. And both of those two topics are relevant to our strategy and actually at the core of our strategy. And if I could maybe just make one point just to the members. The title is Destination Waterfront, and almost creates an impression that the harbour is distinct from the city and the city centre. We want to feel integrated. We want to feel connected to the city centre. We do not want to feel as this is an area separate. Yes, it has its own geographical boundaries and identity, but under our plan, we want to significantly enhance that connectivity, almost make it seamless between the harbour and the city centre. So we're creating this re-energized entire city. So we're a standalone slot today, but please think of us now as very much part of the city and the city centre itself. So the strategic ambition under Building a Port for Everyone, we have 5 themes. That includes being the world's best regional port, one of the world's green port, a key economic hub, a smart port, and an iconic waterfront. Iconic waterfront is what I'd like to focus on today, because I think it'll probably be of most interest to the members. We are substantially an infrastructure business, and we deliver a lot of infrastructure from our marine infrastructure, quays, wharfs, terminals, etc., through to office blocks, through to our hotel, the SE Marriott, through to our movie studios, etc. But to make a place for everyone, it has to be much, much more than infrastructure. We need to create a place, and to do that, we need to partner with a lot of other people. So a core unwritten theme here for our ambition, the underlying premise for delivery of all of this, is working in partnership with a broad range of stakeholders. Clearly, very important stakeholders in the forms of BCC, Belfast City Council, Odyssey here in the Harbour Estate, Belfast Maritime Belfast Trust is one that we put particular emphasis on. And I know you're going to hear from Kerrie shortly, so not steal her thunder, but we see our partnership with the Maritime Belfast Trust is absolutely fundamental to delivering this port for everyone and making infrastructure into a place. It's a vibrant place that we're seeking to create, and something that celebrates its past, but proudly looks to the future and what that can deliver for the city and all of its citizens. We want to be the best regional port in the world, and at the same time, that global ambition extends to what we want to do on our waterfront. So we're not looking just internally in Belfast, we're looking externally and what we can take as inspiration for other cities and from other cities. So we've looked extensively at what's happening in Copenhagen, a really impressive waterfront city. Boston Harbour, I'm sure a lot of you have been there, you'll realise what's a transformation has taken place there over the last 20 years or so. Liverpool 1, I'm sure a lot of us have been there. And the Albert Dock is probably the most pioneering of waterfront initiatives in the UK. So we're looking around at all of those and taking best practice at how we can look at creating an integrated waterfront that's open to everyone, that's connected into the city, and where people can visit, where people can work, where people can live, and people will study and spend time. I often think we think we're at the start of a journey for the city and its waterfront, and that this word iconic is a challenging word for some people. And we did have a lot of debate around the boardroom table around using that word iconic, and we settled on it and said, no, let's have the ambition to be iconic. And in many ways, we have an iconic waterfront already, and we're just seeking to augment it. And to graphically illustrate that, image from Queen's Quay, when I started in the port almost 25 years ago, I think we all recollect what that looked like with coal and scrap and pre-Odyssey times. You can see what it looks like now. We have the Odyssey. We have Titanic Belfast and its global recognition. And I guess above all, we'll always have those iconic cranes that you can see in that upper right photograph, creating that, if you like, the benchmark for the foundation, or foundation for an iconic waterfront. So our strategy now is just to build upon those core elements of an iconic waterfront and creating a place where people will feel that they can, as I said, live, visit, work, and enjoy. So where do we transform it from? And what are we at? What stage are we at in our journey? Well, it is a busy harbour estate already. There are 760 businesses and entities in the harbour estate. We have 30,000 people who are either coming to work here or to study. We've obviously got Belfast Metropolitan Campus on our site, bringing a lot of students in here. And we have 1,500 people that are living here. And you can just see how we're starting to create further investment for people to live and work. In these photographs of a from and to for our City Quays development in the top set of photographs, and then Olympic House is our latest co-development with Titanic Quarter over on Queen's Road, Upper Queen's Road. So as we transform our port and our iconic waterfront and into an iconic waterfront and a further enhanced economic hub, we're going to spend about £250 million over the next 5 years alone to provide the infrastructure, to provide the accommodation, to provide that sense of place, to deliver our plans, but also a lot of the plans for our other city stakeholders, in particular for the Belfast agenda. We hear a lot of commentary now about the Belfast Region City Deal. We believe we can accommodate a number of the significant flagship projects under the Belfast City Region Deal within the harbour. We hear of our investment plans for universities and their strategic ambition. A lot of that will be centred in and around the harbour. contributing to the economic hub and creating to that sense of an iconic waterfront. Our investments, we probably always have to start with the economic piece. Our investments, we believe, will support 3,500 jobs and will create accommodation space for 7,000 new jobs. Where are those new jobs going to come from? We have a harbour state steeped in maritime heritage from shipbuilding and heavy engineering. We hope there's still a future for that, and Harland & Wolff, under its new ownership of Infrastrata, has ambitious plans. But alongside that, there technology and innovation is where we see the future for the harbour estate. A lot of you will probably have picked up around the launch of the Innovation City Belfast proposition earlier this week, working with Belfast City Council, 2 universities, Catalyst and InvestNI. Belfast Harbour is seeking to develop an innovation district, which will include part of the harbour estate, where we'll embrace all of the opportunities that we have and that world-class research that we have within our cyber tech community, within health tech, within clean tech, and creating up to 30,000 jobs. Innovation districts, however, are not just research centres. They're places where people will wish to live and spend time together as an innovation community. And we believe the harbour estate will provide the infrastructure to do that, where people will work, but they'll also live here and they'll also spend their leisure time here, visiting leisure areas, visiting restaurants, coffee shops, etc. Above all, it has to be a waterfront for all of our communities. So we're looking to create as an accessible space as possible, and we're inviting people to live in the area. So as well as creating economic activity, we're going to create a substantial residential base or population within the harbour estate. Most of that will be concentrated in Titanic Quarter, but some of it in City Quays. Under the local development plan, there are intentions to deliver 3,500 homes in the Belfast Harbour area. And as you know, the city has plans for 32,000 extra homes by 2035. So Belfast Harbour and its partners will play a huge role in delivering elements of the Belfast agenda and providing a new place of new substantial place for people to live within the city. To do that, we feel it's vitally important we have to be connected to the city. So connection and creating that safe and vibrant waterfront is a substantial element of our plan. I think a lot of people know the harbour through our Belfast Maritime festivals, and our tall ships clearly is where people get the most visibility. But we want to enhance that and create that not just every 2 years or every 5 years. We want to have that sense of connectivity and that awareness that people can come down here at any time and enjoy, like that centre photograph, people sitting around in the Matic during the Maritime Festival. To do that, we have to be connected, and we want to feel safe, make sure that the area feels safe. So we have our Belfast Harbour Police. We have pivoted our police offer, if I call it that, to very much a community-based policing service. On the ground, you should see a much more visibility of our police working with residents, working with workers, the office staff, people who are visiting, a highly visible policing service, which will create that safe environment. We've invested heavily also in our CCTV and technology. We also wanted to be safe on the water, and we've just entered into a 5-year partnership agreement with Lagan Search and Rescue, top right photograph, to provide a safe marine environment and environment for those along the water edge. Finally, what are we doing? We're creating a future waterfront for future generations. We have incredibly strong maritime heritage and an area where people often associated 30,000 people or 40,000 people going to work. By 2035, I'm hoping 30 and 40,000 people will be visiting here for all manner of works, but particularly from an innovation technology perspective. A large number of people will be living here, probably the order of 7,500 people. And we will have at least 3 or 4 million people visiting all of the attractions here. The new attractions, which are going to be built, those existing attractions like a revitalised and revamped Odyssey, Titanic Belfast, or Maritime Heritage. And you can see with initiatives like building an aquarium, etc., we're creating further leisure opportunities, which will augment and be available to those people who live in the new homes and residences that will be constructed in Titanic Quarter and in City Quays. How are we going to connect all of that? We have an ambitious plan to create a new cycle and pedestrian bridge from the SE Marriott Hotel across to Odyssey. We're in an advanced design stage for that, and that's just an artist's impression of it. We have plans for a significant new public green space or garden in and around City Quays, which will shortly be going into planning. So again, it's very much beyond the hard infrastructure. It's creating that sense of place and connectivity and substantial public realm investment as well on our part, and working again with all the stakeholders. So I love the strap. We talk about a port for everyone as our strap line, and I hope that's what we obviously are today, and like us to be considered that today, but we'll enhance that over the next 10, 15 years. I have a particular favourite strap line that for those of you who ever get a chance to go around the waterfront around City Quays, we have a hoarding around City Quays 3 that we're delivering at the minute. This will be the largest new office block in the city, 250,000 square feet, accommodating about 1,800 people. And that hoarding says creating a place to work, to live, to enjoy, to relax, and be part of. And I think that's a strap line that not only do we want to see just around City Quays, but around the entirety of the harbour estate as we pivoted away from that hard industrial background to somewhere where people will know that there's employment opportunities and economic opportunities. They know it's a rich place and environment to live. They know they can go down here and spend their leisure time and enjoy it. They know that they can relax in that safe environment, and above all, they'll feel that they're a part of the port and that the port is a part of the city. Thank you, everyone, and I appreciate that was a rush through an extensive strategy we have, and I'm obviously available at any time if anyone would like to pick up any individual aspects of it.
Joe, thank you very much for that. That was superb, and really does give a snapshot, as you said, skip through that absolutely fantastic vision that the harbour has. And kind of thank you and the team at Belfast Harbour for the leadership that you have been showing in terms of the regeneration and redevelopment of that important part of our city and the partnership work that you're undertaking. And kind of particularly thank you for using the picture of Liverpool's sixth European Cup success. I know that will have delighted Dawson McConkey from Carson McDowell, who's watching. He will have loved to have seen that. So thank you very much for that and for your presentation. One of the things that Joe mentioned was making the harbour area, making Belfast Waterfront a place to live in. And we're now going to go to John Davidson from Turley Planning, who is going to tell us a little bit about a proposed development in the Titanic Quarter called Loft Lines. Once John has given his presentation, we're going to talk to Alex Pease from Watkin Jones. Alex is the Chief Investment Officer at Watkin Jones, and he's going to tell us a little bit about their experience of developing schemes like this elsewhere. So John, over to you to show us a little bit more about this new scheme. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Simon. Good morning, everyone. Alex and myself are really delighted to share and launch essentially the Loft Lines as a brand and as a community of lifestyle first rental homes on the riverfront. To give you some idea, what we're trying to do is shape that community, shape as Joe had said, a really great place to live in Titanic Quarter. For those of you who are unfamiliar maybe with the site in the wider context, the Loft Lines is just on a brownfield site, just adjacent to Titanic Belfast. It's just out of shot here. And this gives you a bit of a context of the wider master plan of Titanic Quarter, with the Loft Line sitting next to Titanic Belfast, the SS Nomadic, and the new proposed Hamilton Dock Hotel that achieved planning last year. When we were considering what was needed in the city, I suppose 5 things sort of came to mind, and it chimed, I suppose, with the Belfast agenda. And that was about quality, creating high quality homes, space, that space for people to enjoy, that public realm that Joe was talking about, and Kerrie will talk about more. Most importantly, homes for everyone, homes for all. So when we talk about private rental, there's also housing association homes and social and affordable. We'll talk more about that. And the environment and the importance of resilience built into the scheme. And really the strongest emphasis was on creating a community in and around Titanic Quarter. And we've translated these into 5 values-led principles, which really informs what the Loft Lines is about. It's about precision placemaking. It's about having space for life, and I think that's become really important in the consequence of the pandemic. We've started to really understand the importance of space and how we use it. Creating a sense of pride of place, and as I said, a place for everyone to enjoy, and then contribute to a sustainable environment and shaping that future community. And the Loft Lines itself, is about reflecting an area and an energy in the city. I mean, this area of the city in Titanic Belfast was where Harland and Wolff once sat, and you know, it takes cues in terms of its design from those very industrial parts, buildings that inhabited the site. Having done some research, really what we found was actually the site on its location was the mold loft. And this was an area, and you can see the picture here from the Ulster Museum. And it was a large area with a black floor where some of the most skilled craftspeople working in the shipyards would have actually scaled up the plans, and they would have done that by marking out in these white lines on the black floor the actual panels of the ship. And so the Loft Lines is about kind of remembering that history, but scaling up that lifestyle in the city. So as I say, it sort of draws from that in terms of design, that Belfast Industrial Pass. You can see the articulated roof lines of Harland and Wolff and this area of Titanic Quarter. And you can see how that's been translated into the design of the Loft Lines, and putting it in context, this huge riverfront promenade along the frontier. But actually, as much as it's been about the design of the buildings and referencing the shipyards, the pandemic has shown us all just having outdoor space has become really important. And what you can see here is this large 1 acre square in the center of the development, where the pedestrian has been prioritized, a place where you can come and have a coffee and relax and enjoy space outside with landscaped courtyards. You can see roof gardens and rooftop terraces. And South Yard Square will be this 1 acre park in the center of the development. And of course, we've got about 3.8 acres of the site. One whole, acre of it is this public realm, this public park. But it also benefits from a 20-meter wide public promenade that will form a kilometer of or form 100 meters of the Maritime Mile. And Kerrie will probably explain a bit more about that. But it's about creating a sense of place and a destination, both night and day, where people feel safe to come and walk along the river. And we've seen just through the pandemic just how popular this part of the city has become for people walking along the promenade. In addition, there's a wide boulevard. So again, deprioritizing the car. The original master plan had a road, so that's been turned into an entirely pedestrian-only zone. And South Yard Square itself is really about having these multiple uses. So there's formal lawns, there's a sunken play park, there's a sports service for basketball, and there's a lot of active uses on that ground first floor. And that's to encourage this sense of cafe culture, a place for people to come and enjoy, a destination in its own right, but also spaces for community-based shops, a creche, cafes, and really for small businesses and community enterprises to start up. And that sort of access from South Yard Square to the promenade is facilitated by this wide pedestrian boulevard, and creating that sense of connectivity to the water from other parts of Titanic Belfast, Titanic Quarter, from Titanic Belfast and the likes of the SS Nomadic, and creating a sense of being able to walk through the development, it being a place for everyone to enjoy. It's a fully managed site, so this is really learning from European models, the Swiss approach to learning, where residents pay a rent, but that would include more than just the rental of their apartment. It would have access to amenities like gyms and lounges and cinema rooms and Wi-Fi, all in one rent. We've talked about 800 homes, and we've talked about homes for all, and it's that ambition to bring together a new community on this site with for rent lifestyle apartments sitting alongside affordable and social homes as well. 20% of the 800 homes will be housing association homes managed by a housing association partner. And you can see this is a place really for everyone. So this is looking at a whole range of different people, from small families with 1, 2 and 3 bedroom homes for up to 6 people. As I mentioned, about 150 housing association homes, but also a mix of one-person studios for downsizers or professionals, and two-person apartments as well, and some accessible apartments within the buildings. And it is about this lifestyle. So it's about creating a sense of well-being, and that's about having private dining spaces, breakout areas, residence lounges, and access to this kind of holistic approach. It's one of the most sustainable locations, in the sense that it's next to some of these larger employers that Joe had mentioned in the harbour area and in the harbour estate. But also it's got really very close proximity to the glider, the TQ rail halt, and that sense of sustainability is key. We want to celebrate public and active transport, so really emphasising the use of bikes and pedestrian access to and through the site. It's the first scheme to offer active frontage, bike storage, but these will be bike storage like you've never seen before, with washdown areas and repair facilities, and really, as I say, celebrate using active transport and getting people out into the city. All of the three buildings will use air source heat pump technology, so to reduce, again, the carbon footprint and any reliance on fossil fuels. And this is essentially a new approach to placemaking, so that the communal spaces are designed to try and encourage that social integration and promote a sense of well-being. There will be a front of house, and it's a fully managed site, but also the buildings themselves will have front of house and concierge staff. And that's to connect residents to a wider community, to services within the buildings and between the buildings, as well as for welfare and safety. And within the actual master plan, there are podium gardens, extra spaces for it with sort of informal seating, planted gardens, spill-out areas for gyms so they can hold classes in the open air, all managed by a management company. And those plans are being informed by Fresh at the moment, which is part of the Watkin Jones group. And this gives you just sort of a sense of the overall master plan. These large pedestrian boulevard, South Yard Square, that 1 acre public park. These are some of the roof gardens and roof terraces, but also these large public courtyard or resident courtyards in the centre of the buildings. So there's a mixture of public amenity space, private amenity space, and creating that sense of place. We are launching our public consultation on the Loft Lines as part of the planning application that will be submitted later this year. We'll be holding a series of webinars on the 1st and 3rd of June. And on Monday, we'll be launching the project website. So we're really keen to continue a dialogue and a conversation. We've met with literally more than 100 people already just to shape these proposals. And we're really excited to see what people think about the proposals. So I said it would be a whistle-stop tour, kind of breathless, Simon, but I mean, maybe over to you and Alex.
John, thank you very much for that. That's really super presentation and gives us a real sense of what's going to hopefully happen at Loft Lines in the not too distant future. So thank you for going through that. As I mentioned, Alex Pease from Watkin Jones, and for those who don't know Watkin Jones are the UK's leading developer and manager of residential homes for rent and also student accommodation. And I know that Watkin Jones have been involved in Belfast and before in terms of the growth of our purpose-built student accommodation. But Alex, I mean, John's presentation was a great skip through what you're working with partners to deliver down in Titanic Quarter, and really exciting looking, very, very, very different, perhaps not what we're sort of historically used to in Belfast. And it seems almost that, whilst there's the term build to rent is used a lot to describe this sector, it's more like people are buying a lifestyle. There's so many. John talked more about the things around the accommodation, the amenity space, the additional facilities and so forth, and what was actually inside where you were living. To what extent is it sort of more about a lifestyle, and therefore how important is that area in which, and in this case right on Belfast's waterfront, how important is that area in which this type of accommodation is located to selling it and to developing it?
Sure. Well, morning everyone, and thanks very much for having me on. It's hugely important. I mean, I think we probably think of it less as lifestyle and more as community. If you really had to define what residential for rent is for us, it's all about building a community within a building, but it's not just the building, it's everything that surrounds it. And I guess what we're trying to do whenever we develop in any of the UK cities that we're prevalent in is we're trying to create an environment that people want to stay, not just short term, but long term. And you can't do that just by providing them a little box to live in. You've got to think much more holistically, and that's why, as you say, John's spent a lot of time talking about the surrounding elements to the building, and it is incredibly important for us to sort of, what we're trying to create is a really diverse sort of community who want to stay and are retained within the buildings. And we want to do that not just because it's a good thing to do and because it creates a better environment, but also we have investors who want to own these buildings and they want them to perform. And the key to good performance of these buildings is retention. You want people to stay. The biggest cost to you as a landlord is losing tenants and having to remarket and replace them. So it's much smarter to actually create a better environment for them so they don't leave.
You mentioned there that Watkin Jones is a huge organisation doing a lot of this type of development, largely across the water in GB. And maybe you could give us a sense of the scale of what you have been doing elsewhere, how successful that has been, how it has helped to drive regeneration in those cities that you've been involved in.
Sure. I mean, I guess in terms of our scale, we probably got a pipeline of about 1.4 billion of residential for rent assets in the UK at the moment, and they are predominantly located in sort of urban regeneration areas, city centres. And I guess, if I can identify why we want to be in Belfast, I'm personally pretty passionate about Belfast as a market. I'm absolutely fallen in love with the city and what it can give to its sort of people who live there. Our companies follow that up, as you mentioned. We've gone into Belfast and student accommodation in a big way, and we probably went in at a time when we were the first private developer to come in, and I think there's probably a few people who said they didn't get why we're going in. It wasn't proven, it's never worked before, and really that was because no one had actually tried it. And I think when I think of Belfast, I think of a fantastic, vibrant city. It's got great energy, it's got a young population, it's also sort of quite a compact city, which makes it sort of really useful. You can really reach your CBD, you can reach your leisure and retail, you can reach your airports all very, very easily, and that's great from our perspective because we are firm believers in that sort of live-work balance, the ability to walk to work, possibly work at home some days. We think they're really symbiotic with each other. So I think when we look at Belfast and we say, look, it's got brilliant retail, it's got brilliant leisure, it's got a fantastic blend of branded operators, boutique operators, and it should be an absolute 24/7 city. And that's where we see some opportunity, because currently there's probably a few days of the week where the city centre is quite quiet, and it's because there's not that many people living in the city centre yet. And that to us is a huge opportunity, because we can't understand why an area as good as Belfast, right on the waterfront, iconic landmark building, 15 minutes into the town centre, is not absolutely full of people wanting to live there. And that's the opportunity we're spotting. That's why we want to be there. I think that's it.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the other bit, we obviously, do student accommodation as well. And, I think the connectivity, what drives residential for rent is employment. What drives employment is higher education. And Belfast is blessed with two great universities in the city centre. And, if Belfast is like any other city in the UK, it's all about how do you retain those graduates? How do you make them want to stay? You've just educated them for 3, 4, 5 years. You want those brains to stay in that city and help drive the sort of economy. To us, residential for rent is that sort of logical sort of next step. It helps keep people in the city. It helps them living in amongst it, spending their money. So yeah, it's a really nice transition.
That's a huge, from what you just said, is a huge vote of confidence in Belfast as a city to visit, live in, study in, invest in. When we get you a job with Visit Belfast as well, and sort of promoting Belfast on that way, that was as good a synopsis of why this is a great place to be. Just maybe finally, we mentioned there that and you picked up on this, that this type of residential is not something that we have historically had in Belfast, and there are myriad reasons why that's the case. You're saying that the time seems right for it, and that's why Watkin Jones are taking an interest in Belfast. Joe mentioned the Belfast agenda and the ambitious targets in terms of increasing the number of people living in Belfast, with a big focus on central Belfast for that. What advice or thoughts have you got in terms of what has worked elsewhere in other cities that you're active in terms of helping to stimulate that growth? Because obviously things are moving in the right direction, but there's still a long way to go to reach that sort of ambition of having 20 or 30,000 more people living in and around the city.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no silver bullet. It's an amalgamation of loads of things, and to be honest, we haven't come in sort of blindly, sort of just by ourselves. We're partnering with some of the best in Belfast, the City Harbour, Titanic Quarter, Lacuna. We're trying to sort of bring all of our knowledge of what's worked elsewhere in terms of how do you drive a community, how do you actually create a service living environment, and combining it with actually learning new things about what drives sort of Belfast. So I think there's lots of naysayers out there, and we're there to sort of prove them wrong. And I think getting people to support us, we're obviously starting our sort of planning process, and hopefully getting that confidence that we are here to deliver this. We've delivered 5 schemes in Belfast. We don't just want it to be us either. We'd welcome competition. The more schemes that we can encourage into Belfast, it will help drive that sort of that buzz, that economy. So yeah, there's no, like I said, there's no silver bullet. I just think it's this combination of having supportive partners, people really sort of understanding what catalyst, it really is a catalyst for regeneration across the UK. Student and build to rent, they bring footfall, they bring customers in great numbers very, very quickly compared to your traditional house building where you might eke units onto the market to protect pricing. We've got the opportunity to deliver 800 units in quite a short period of time. That drives footfall, that drives helps support local retailers, convenience, leisure, and it all kind of catalyzes and sort of grows momentum, and that's really what we're trying to achieve.
Alex, thanks for that. We really appreciate your time this morning. If you hang around, because there's a few more questions later on about the scheme, but I'm going to now turn to Kerrie Sweeney. Kerrie is the CEO at Maritime Belfast, and very much heavily involved in animating the space around Belfast's waterfront. And Kerrie's going to give us a run through on what Maritime Belfast are doing to make this important part of our city an even more attractive place to spend leisure time. Kerrie, thank you very much.
Hey, good morning, everybody. So yes, thanks very much, Simon. So yes, we are Maritime Belfast Trust. We're a charity, and we exist to preserve and promote Belfast's rich maritime heritage for the enjoyment of current and future generations, and in doing so contribute to the sustainable social and economic development of the entire city. So essentially we were set up to establish Titanic Belfast. So that was over 14 years ago, and it's our primary source of income. And then we use the money that we get from Titanic Belfast to reinvest in the wider destination. Since then, we have acquired SS Thematic in 2015 very successfully. We have had over 1 million visitors on SS Thematic. And in 2018, we worked in partnership with Titanic Quarter Limited to develop and restore the Harrington withdrawing offices into the Titanic Hotel Belfast. So a lot of our work has really concentrated on Titanic Quarter and the Titanic story. But what we realise is our story is much bigger. Belfast, as Emma said in the introduction, is a maritime city. We have a much bigger maritime story to tell. Belfast exists and started where the 3 rivers entwined really at Belgrade Clock. It is a city of commerce. We wouldn't have had the commerce if it wasn't for the river. It's a city of industry. We wouldn't have had all the great industries, the shipbuilding, the road works, the whiskey distilleries, if it wasn't for the river. And it's always been a city of innovation, and right up to the current day where we have this new innovation district that Belfast City Council is progressing, and it will sit on our waterfront. So I suppose really what we are trying to do, and it just reiterates what everybody has said this morning, is about connecting the waterfront up and using this amazing story that we have in terms of Belfast as a maritime city to connect up the different parts of the waterfront, because it can be quite disconnected at the minute, and I'll explain in a bit then why the concept of the Maritime Mile works. Connecting to the city centre, because our maritime story isn't just in the port, it goes right throughout the city, but even more important is connecting to people and communities. We need to connect people back to the water, but also connect those neighbourhood communities that have lived so long on the waterside. So our main initiative is the Maritime Mile. So we've been working on it over the last 2 years, and the whole concept of it is taking the main accessible parts of the waterfront from the Lagan Weir footbridge on both sides of the river and trying to connect it into a seamless, vibrant experience. And very much part of this whole concept of the iconic waterfront. So it takes the City Quays area, Sailortown area, Donegal Quays, the Queen's Quay, all around the Odyssey, the Titanic Quarter, and right up to Catalyst Inc. And where HMS Caroline sits. And that's really our logo that we've developed. And the whole point of the logo is to try and represent the connectivity of the water, connecting all of those different parts, and then right into the city centre, connecting into Custom House and the Big Fish in Donegal Quay, and that whole part of the city. So 2 years ago, we brought in a cultural placemaking company, Future City, and they worked with us and they identified 17 projects that they thought could be really catalytic and help us to really position the Maritime Mile as an iconic experience for visitors as well as for local people. So some of those are a mixture of projects that are short, medium and long term. So they really range from landscape enhancement projects to temporary pop-ups, giving opportunities for local businesses to come down on site. The whole concept of an outdoor museum. We very much position the Titanic story as not so much a museum in the building, but a visitor attraction that sits in the landscape of a museum. We have the slipways, we've got SS Nomadic, we've got these amazing huge artifacts, the ports, the quaysides, and it's trying to bring that all to life as part of this outdoor museum. And then working with local neighbourhoods so that we can capture all of those really exciting stories, those little snippets, and integrate that into our public realm so it becomes a very authentic experience. Some of the bigger projects in terms of the work that Future City did also looked at reimagining the Thompson Dock. It's probably our largest heritage asset on site that hasn't fully realised its potential as yet. A whole harbour lights programme. How do we really develop our evening economy and have an extensive harbour lights experience along the waterfront, and as well as the bridges that Joe has already mentioned. And we would like to see more than just one more additional bridge. It would be great to see a few along the river. So some of the projects that we've completed to date over the last couple of years, the Great Light. So this was a 130-year-old lighthouse optic. It's probably one of the rarest in the world, and we now have it on public display along the Titanic Walkway. Riverbox was a shipping container art installation, which we delivered in partnership with Dumworld, an arts organisation. And basically it is a mini opera that tells the story of the coming and goings of the port. Glass of Thrones is a celebration of the film studios and the fact that we did actually have Game of Thrones filmed on location on the Maritime Mile, and we've got 6 glass stained glass windows that stretch from city quays the whole way along the waterfront as an experience. The relocation of the Belfast Boys from Cathedral Quarter over to the Abercorn Marina. Now they sit beside the sea and animate that part of the waterfront. We've engaged with a whole range of different sectors, and Hello Maritime Mile was a project that we delivered with the Smart Belfast team and Belfast City Council, whereby we worked with tech companies to develop an experience where the public could actually talk to the objects through their phones, and won quite a few awards for that project. And the Maritime Mile Treasure Trail then was an experience that we launched last year for families to engage in the Maritime Mile, especially because of COVID and the restrictions. People didn't have anywhere to go. And what we've actually discovered is over the last 12 months, every day we've been getting about 1,000 people down on the waterfront, really just enjoying the public area. And it's something that we want to hold on to, because previously we wouldn't have had near that footfall. So, you know, for the first time, local people are discovering the area, and it's not just for visitors and tourists. In terms of some of the projects that we have up and coming just over the next few months, if you're down in the area, you'll see them arriving. So the Sandyard is a new play installation that we worked with RSUA on their city play design competition in 2019, and this was the winning submission. Local young architects designing a play area for children that they can interact with, and it mimics the sands of the shipyard. And the Maritime Festival, we're working on a programme with Belfast City Council that will run in September this year. It's not the usual format for the Maritime Festival, but it will animate the whole of the waterfront over an entire weekend. Again, hoping to drive people back onto the waterfront. But again, one of the key objectives that we have been looking at the Maritime Festival is how do we connect it back into the retail hub of the city centre. Hubbin is an exciting project that we're working with Belfast City Council, and it is 10 million euros working with 8 European cities, really in the transformation of historic urban areas using innovation and technology. And this is an opportunity for us to align the innovation district within the city with the heritage and tourism offer and come up with innovative solutions. And one of the key challenges that will feed into that process is about the connectivity. How can we develop solutions that really encourage connectivity between people and the water, between heritage and visitors, between local communities, so that they feel part of what's happening in the area? So that's sort of just a whistle-stop tour on some of the work that we're doing on the Maritime Mile. It doesn't stop, and really this map just shows just a little bit of some of the massive amounts of developments that will take place over the next 20 years. Joe's already touched upon it, but Turley's had done an audit for us about 12 months ago, just in terms of potential projects in the planning pipeline that will impact on the way in which the public areas will look and feel. So really what we have been doing is working with any developers, anybody who has projects in the area, really trying to bring them on board with the Maritime Mile. We've got toolkits, we've got branding guidelines, and integrating their projects with what we're doing so that we're all working together to create a seamless experience. So we are here to offer advice, research, we've got a lot of historical evidence, and really just work in partnership with everybody to deliver our objectives. So thank you very much.
Kerrie, thank you very much for that. And, you know, it definitely has been one of the sort of interesting things that has developed over the last year or so, where people have discovered, maybe for the first time in many cases, that the Titanic Quarter and the Maritime Mile is somewhere for leisure. And you know, I was there a few weekends ago myself, and it was alive with people, and that's the sort of thing that we want to see permanently down there. So thank you to you and the team for all of the work that you're doing to make that possible. Before we take a few questions in the time that's left to us, and lots of you inputting questions in, and this is a very tech savvy bunch of guests that we have today, and have been answering a lot of them live. I'm going to go back to Emma just to get her thoughts on what has been said so far. And I got a message from our president, Michael Stewart, who said that all of these projects are great, but they just make him wish that he was 20 years younger so that he could enjoy them much more. And I think that sort of typifies the sense of, you know, this is a city that is going places. What we have heard today is phenomenal. You know, when all of these things are developed and finalized, it's already a city we can be proud of, but it's starting to look like that sort of modern, forward-looking, cosmopolitan city that we want to have in Belfast. Any thoughts, any takeaways that you've picked up on?
Save for trying to get my name down on the apartment list. That penthouse I think you wanted, I'm going to take that one. It's all fantastic. I have always thought of Belfast as being quite a compact city compared to other cities I've lived in, certainly in England. So it does surprise me sometimes that this connectivity issue is such a big thing for Belfast, because it is so compact. But I think looking at some of the Q&A coming in, it is an issue, and it is something which is being addressed. And obviously, Kerrie talked about the Maritime Mile and the proposals and how we're encouraging people to take that walk and to integrate the harbour back into Belfast. I think Joe set the tone with his presentation of it being a port for all, and that the harbour and the waterfront is iconic already. It's just augmenting that, and obviously looking at Belfast Harbour and its partnerships in terms of how to do that and making it a shared community, creating that activity. I've also taught my children there to the waterfront quite recently, and I agree. It's somewhere you don't think about, but it's fantastic, and it's really exciting to think about how Belfast is going to develop and how the harbour is going to be so instrumental in that. As long as I have my apartment and my penthouse, we'll all be fine. Yeah, it's great.
I think there might be a bit of competition for that one. And you're one of the themes that has come forward here. I'm going to maybe ask Joe this question is around, everybody touched on connectivity, a lot of questions coming in about connectivity. Niall O'Donoghue, one of our former Lord Mayors in the city, has asked about that, you know, how important, and you mentioned it yourself, Joe, at the beginning, that, you know, the waterfront area, the harbour area, the port can't be seen as a place apart. It's hugely important that it is, to use a great word that Niall has used, re-stitched our city, and that, you know, it's all better integrated. There's been a few questions about Sailor Town, an important historic community right on the doorstep of the port. We've saw various examples of bridges. You're talking about those moving forward. It's safe to say that connectivity, breaking down some of that heavy infrastructure that has maybe made the city centre a sort of an island and a separate place apart, part of the wider community connected to those neighbourhoods that adjoin it. That's crucially important to the success, not just of what we've seen today, but the city as a whole moving forward, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, Simon. Unfortunately, I don't have an easy answer for Niall, but I think what we can say today is the right people have an awareness to what the issue is, and therefore need to collectively come together to provide a solution. Part of the reason for not having that easy magic wand here on a one solution is that we are working with a former industrial landscape, which will take time to revitalise and redevelop. We're working with a roads network and infrastructure which suited that former layout and activity base, but clearly doesn't align and work best with what's planned. So some radical rethinking on road schemes is probably going to be required here. That does mean that we need to have a wider integration of parties, including obviously road service, DFI, City Council, ourselves, etc. Niall refers to some of the land that sits around Titanic Quarters and City Quays that maybe creates some obstacles to connectivity back into the city centre. We own some of that land, as does Belfast City Council, and we're already holding discussions as to how we can bring forward projects which will improve the connectivity through our mutual development of our respective sites. Initiatives like the Greater Clarendon master plans, etc., will obviously help that as well. So something which is on the radar, won't unfortunately probably be a quick step solution, but one I think we can collectively deliver a really good outcome for. The other time I didn't answer the question actually live because I knew it was going to be picked up in Kerrie's presentation, but Sailor Town is very much part of our ambition and our master plan as well. Just this 10 minutes constraints, I couldn't cover every area, but we very much value and wish to integrate Sailor Town into all of our plans. We sit on the Sailor Town Regeneration Group. We support it through our community engagement fund, and we're supporting them with some of their green parklet initiatives, etc. So Sailor Town, just to re-emphasise, a core element of our master plans.
So, and I mean, one of the things we do, you mentioned other cities that you have learned from, and there are examples. You mentioned Copenhagen. Oslo's another good example of a waterfront port city which had heavy industry and big roads cutting through their city centre, core city off from their port, and obviously those are places that you're looking at, and maybe one of the lessons is that it doesn't happen overnight. It does take some time, but as long as the drive and determination is there, it's something that you can do. You can transform your waterfront.
We visited Copenhagen, and Kerrie from Maritime Belfast Trust was on that trip 2 years ago, and it was hugely insightful and hugely impressive to see what's happening in terms of waterfront regeneration on a mixed-use basis in Copenhagen. But they were equally open with us with regard to what's not worked and what they would do differently. And one of the important takeaways we got from it was, and I have to sorry disappoint Emma here with regard to her penthouse apartment, but it can't all be penthouse apartments for bright young technicians working in innovation space. It needs to be a community for everyone. You need to have the social housing, etc. And clearly, it's great to see Watkin students have responded to that already with Project Kerrie, and as will other schemes that we take forward and will be brought forward on the harbour. It's important that the social and affordable housing is introduced into that, and it's a community for everyone.
Thanks, Joe. And Kerrie, that's a very good point that Joe makes about the need for it to be a port for everyone and the inclusive nature of it. And you mentioned, that footfall in the area has gone up dramatically over the last year, and we understand the reasons why. But do you see this as an area which can be developed, and that you're deliberately developing, maybe drawing on some of those examples that you've seen from elsewhere as a place for families every bit as much as it is for those bright young things that Joe was talking about?
Well, definitely, and a place for neighbourhood communities, that they really should see this is their own area of recreation. We engage a lot with local communities and really trying to integrate them and their stories and this sense of ownership that they have. And certainly the sand yard, this play installation that we're putting in, it will be in situ hopefully by the end of August. And even the fact that it was designed by 3 young architects in their 30s, and really trying to keep that local talent in the area and giving something back. It is really just for children to come here, and we've got another play area up past HMS Caroline, and again it was thriving over the last 12 months where people could come down and utilize it. So we need a lot more of that. Play areas, seating areas, just places to relax. I suppose where we need to plan for all weather facilities. So also quite a lot of our plans in terms of the public realm and those 17 projects is looking at, how can we have more shelters and develop that as well. So we're also working with the likes of the Conswater Greenway, and how do we connect Victoria Park over some of the areas that Joe's mentioned there, cycling for families. If we can crack the cycling from, really the C.S. Lewis Square over Victoria Park, right along the Maritime Mile, so you're mixing a blue way and a green way for the city, and connect into the Lacuna path or the North Foreshore. Suddenly you've got, a great family, cycling experience that doesn't really go on any roads whatsoever.
Yeah, thanks, Kerrie. And that leads nicely into the question for you, John, around Belfast bikes. I think it was Nuala Carville asked a question about the Belfast bike scheme, hugely popular. I mean, you can't move in the city at the moment without seeing groups of people using the bikes. They're going really, really well. Is that one of those types of amenities that you're looking to extend to the new development?
Yeah, absolutely. We've proposed a contribution to Belfast bikes and a docking station as part of the plans, and I think it sort of speaks to the vision for celebrating the bike and making the Loft Lines a really sustainable location in the city. Joe talked about the connectivity to the city centre, and what better way than to cycle and sort of reduce the reliance on cars. And I think that's a really important piece when we think about all development in Belfast, as we kind of look to create a more resilient city that's greener. We need to get people out of cars and actually living, in the city centre is one of the best ways we can do that. So creating that connectivity, that access to cycle paths and cycleways, as well as walking and public transport, is absolutely key.
Thank you. And last question to you, Alex. Then I mean, this sounds like you're working with Lacuna developments to bring Loft Lines to life, and but it does sound, all of these sorts of developments and that reconnection with Belfast Waterfront does sound like it's making a sort of a desirable city for a firm like yours to invest in. So do you see a big potential, big future for Belfast in terms of residential development?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we just got to get this one off the ground and moving, which we're going full steam ahead on. And I think there will be a snowball effect. Again, for all the reasons I listed before, this is a fantastic city, is the absolute perfect sort of petri dish for residential for rent to thrive, and it just needs to be built. And yeah, we're very optimistic. And just to pick up on, there was one question on affordable, and we've gone above and beyond what policies say. We've made a real statement of intent to include 20% affordable, just because we think it's the right thing to do. We think it's the right thing to have that diverse community. It makes for a better residential experience when you're not just aiming at all at one sort of very thin sort of target market. And it makes sense for us as investors and developers, but it makes sense for the customers themselves.
Yeah, and that helps to bring those families in and get that mix. Yeah, so yeah, listen, thank you, Alex, for that. Final thoughts, Emma, from you before we wrap up.
Well, the harbour has always, as we said, been central to Belfast, and it's phenomenal to think how it's going to grow and what it's going to be in terms of shared future and the shared community and the activity that will create. So I'm really excited to see what happens in the next 5-10 years, 15, 20 maybe.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Emma. And just leaves it to me, we're just a little bit past the hour, but I think everybody will agree it's well worthwhile in terms of hearing those excellent presentations, which would, on a wet and miserable day, should give us a bit of hope for the future of our city. Can I just leave it to me to thank all of our participants today. Can I thank Joe and Kerrie and John and Alex for taking the time to prepare for this, and also to give up their time today to talk to us. We're all very grateful for that. Can I also thank Neil and the team at MD Events for making this run so smoothly, and can I once again thank Emma and the team at Carson McDowell for their sponsorship for our Re-Energizing Belfast series. It's been a great series so far, and we're looking forward to our final event in the series, which is scheduled for Friday the 25th of June at 10 a.m. and it's entitled Energize Cities, and what we're going to do is look at the lessons that Belfast can learn as we continue on our regeneration journey that we've covered over these last 3 events. We're going to do that with the help of Tom Reardon, who is the Chief Executive at Leeds City Council, and Anne Skovbro, who is the Chief Executive at the Port and City Authority in Copenhagen, a city that has been mentioned quite a few times during this presentation, and we're all very much looking forward to hearing what those 2 cities have done in terms of their regeneration, and what we can pick up and learn from here in Belfast. So thank you all for attending today. If you can go to our website, belfastchamber.com, you can register for that event, and indeed any others that you see there. Thank you everybody for your attendance today, and look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Thank you.
Thanks.